We're just really grateful to have the participation of our community here. We want to start today in a good way by acknowledging where we are, and that is the University of Calgary, located in the heart of Southern Alberta, where we both acknowledge and pay tribute to the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nation, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and Stoney Nakoda, which includes Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nation. And the city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Now I'm going to come back and share some slides at the end as well to show you some other resources we have at the university, but I'm going to stop sharing my slides here while we get Richard may want to share his, but I want to introduce you to our keynote today. We're really delighted and privileged to have Richard with us. I met him at a conference for Healthy Campus Alberta this year. And he's taught me a lot about making connections, because having high quality connections is one of the key indicators for happiness and health. Yet so much can get in the way of making these deep connections. And whether it's our anxiety or the busyness of our schedules or misconceptions on what it takes to truly build these authentic and nourishing relationships, you may feel like something's wrong with you if you're feeling lonely or socially anxious or awkward. But our keynote speaker, Richard Lee Tai, is here to show you that you don't need to feel ashamed, and it's possible to develop your connection skills regardless of where you're currently at. There can be a campus culture where everyone feels connected, supported, and energized through their everyday encounters. So starting off as a beginner in connection, Richard's now a connection expert. He's a TEDx speaker, connection consultant, and an author. His TEDx, How to Find Excuses to Connect, outlines how people can make meaningful connections easier. Practicing what he preaches, he is also known for projects like Humans of UV Lethbridge, in which he interviewed 70+ students, staff, professors, and shared their stories online. And Richard's mission is to create a world without loneliness. And so he's spoken to over 3,000 people to get them involved in the human connection movement. And today we're going to speak to several more here at UC Calgary. And so you're about to be part of that. And please welcome Richard Lee Tai.
Okay. I wanted to start off with this story of lollipop moments. One of my favorite TEDx talks is from a speaker named Drew Dudley, and he shares this story of this girl. It's the first day before she's about to start university, and she's sitting in her hotel room with her parents saying, I don't think I'm ready for this. What if I don't fit in? What if this isn't for me? But her parents reassure her and say, just still go to the first day of classes. And if it's really not for you, then yes, we can go home. And so she's standing in line waiting for registration. And she sees this guy come out with this funny hat, and he has a bucket full of lollipops. And this person is Drew Dudley. And so he's walking up to everyone, greeting them, welcoming them, and giving out these lollipops. And Drew gets to this girl. And Drew spots this guy standing next to this girl. And so what Drew does, as sort of a joke, he pulls out this lollipop, he hands it to the guy, and he says, you need to give this lollipop to the beautiful girl standing right next to you. This guy gets all flustered. His face is beet red, but he still takes the lollipop, and he sort of shyly looks away and hands it to the girl. And when the girl takes it, Drew has this very serious look on his face. He looks at the parents and he says, look at this. It's your daughter's first day away from home, and she's already taking candy from a stranger. So all around, people start laughing. And it was actually in that moment that she knew that she wanted to stay there, that she did feel a sense of belonging. Fast forward a few years later, she's about to graduate, and she runs into Drew again. And she tells him, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but you were handing out lollipops on the first day of classes, and you're the reason why I stayed. You're the reason why I'm going to graduate. And that really struck a chord with Drew. He realized that there's these lollipop moments in our lives. There's these interactions where someone has said or done something that's fundamentally made our life better. Even if it's just a small 1-minute interaction, it could have a profound and lasting impact on that person's life. And the twist of this story that I love too, that shy guy that's handing out that lollipop, him and this girl actually ended up getting married. So literally that was their first encounter. Drew brings up this concept of lollipop moments in the context of leadership, where when he asks audiences, do you consider yourself a leader? Many people don't end up raising their hand because they think leadership is a bigger thing than it needs to be. They imagine the charismatic leader standing on the podium leading hundreds of people, when in reality, leadership can be through our everyday interactions. How can we create these lollipop moments where people do feel seen, heard, and appreciated? I've been very inspired by this talk, and I've incorporated it into my own leadership style and how I approach connection building as well. So I want to share that. I facilitated a session earlier this season for a university here in Calgary, and I asked the people in the room, have you ever had a lollipop moment? Have you ever had that instance or that interaction that fundamentally made your life better? And one of the students shared this story with me. He's an international student from Brazil, and he hadn't really made any friends yet for the first month or two that he had been here. But one day on a Friday, this girl approaches him and says, hey, hello, I want to meet who you are. And we're actually having an event at one of my clubs later tonight. Would you want to come? So they strike up this conversation, and a bit into the conversation, this girl offers a hug to this guy, to this student. And this is the first hug that this international student received since leaving home. And so you can see here, actually, he wrote a letter for this girl saying, thank you so, so much. I'm so very lucky to have you as you have me. Love, Freckles. And actually, in this case, this girl and this guy ended up dating as well. This was their first interaction, and it just started with a hello. And so it shows that through our everyday interactions, there can be actually a lot of opportunities to transform our own lives and transform the lives of others through these lollipop moments. It's happened for me as well. As Michelle mentioned earlier, I started a project called Humans of ULEF, which was inspired by Humans of New York. Humans of New York is this project where this photographer went out to interview strangers, get to know their stories, and then share them online. When I had moved from my hometown of Calgary to the University of Lethbridge, I found it really difficult because I had all these expectations that, wow, this is going to be the best 4 years of my life. And yet, once I got there, I felt very lonely. Even though I was physically surrounded by people, by living in residence, being in lecture halls of hundreds of people, I still felt homesick and out of place. And more than that, I felt like something was wrong with me because I would see people posting about the fun events and parties they're going to, and I wasn't invited. I would just have this fear of missing out, and I was sitting alone in my room, again, wondering if anything was wrong with me. And so it was in that context of really craving connection and community that I wanted to make a change for myself. And because I had been following Humans of New York for a while, I had this idea, well, I like writing, I like photography, I want to connect with people, I could start this project. And so one by one, by interviewing students, staff, faculty, and alumni, and even the president of the university at one point, what I learned from this is even in a 30 or 40-minute conversation with someone, I felt like I made a new friend. That's because I've gone beyond small talk and have gone to know who they are as a person. What is their story? What struggles have they had to overcome? And what are their dreams? The other thing I had learned is I wasn't alone in what I was going through. I remember talking to one upper year student. Her name's Victoria, and she used to be the VP external with the University of Lethbridge Students Union. And when I was interviewing her, she shared, I didn't really have many friends. I was never super great at making friends, and I didn't live in residence. So I spent most of my first year alone. And by her being vulnerable and sharing with me that she was also struggling with this, it finally clicked that I wasn't alone in feeling lonely, and there wasn't anything wrong with me. It's just that this topic of loneliness and isolation is so under-discussed that there's still a sense of shame and stigma around it. Because I did feel like I was a loser. I did feel like I was a loner because I couldn't make those meaningful connections. When in reality, this is something that many people go through. And I'm a big advocate for trying to normalize these types of conversations. Especially after the pandemic, we've been lacking those face-to-face interactions. So it's very normal for us to have higher sense of disconnection, social anxiety, and loneliness. So with that framing, what can we actually do about this? Because this presentation is about how do you create a campus culture of connection, let's start with how do you define culture? This is the framing I want to put around it, where culture is the accumulation of interactions. Because when you think about it, every single day that you're on campus, you're having dozens, if not hundreds of interactions with other students, when you're buying food, with your classmates, with your coworkers. And any of those interactions have the capability to either create more connection, where you feel seen and heard and part of a community, or it can also generate disconnection, as in my case, where I would see people on social media posting about their events they're going to, and I felt like I was invisible or adrift in the sea of people. So the question then is, how can we shift our daily interactions to create more connection? So through my presentation, I do want to offer my ideas and perspective, but also want to give the framing that a 1 hour keynote might not necessarily change your whole world, but can start this conversation. I had done a project at some universities now called What's Your Story? So I'll set up this pop-up art gallery essentially where people are given pieces of paper and they can draw or write and respond to this prompt of what's your story? And so I took photos of these, and the one on the left, I think, really captures this sense of campus loneliness that can occur, where even though you're physically surrounded by people, you still feel out of place. You don't feel like you actually have people you can reach out to, and you feel like your connections are very superficial. And maybe you can't actually show up as your authentic self. You just have to pretend or put on a mask and get through the day. There's another story that was shared from the campus community of being a strong person. No one asks if you're okay. So even the people every single day that you pass by, you never quite know what might be going on behind the scenes. They might appear to be happy and smiling and everything, they have everything put together. But behind the scenes, and if you dig deeper, maybe they're not doing okay. And I share this because relational wounds require relational healing. By the time we get to university, many things might have happened in our life. I know, for example, in my case, I grew up feeling quite shy and lonely. I was never modeled, like, here's how you make friends. I had all sorts of misconceptions, for example, like, oh, in TV shows and movies, they portray the main character and then they have their best friend. And I thought, okay, that's what I need to have as well. I need to have a best friend in order to fit in and be normal. But I never had someone I called my best friend. So again, for the longest time, I felt like something was wrong with me. So regardless of what our upbringing was, if it was in a dysfunctional environment, if we were subject to bullying, to abuse, to trauma, recognizing that it's not just on you to try to fix all those problems on your own. Because those wounds were created relationally, it also requires relational healing. You can't just fix loneliness by yourself. It's done through community healing. And so the key question then is, how can we create spaces for us to show up as our authentic selves? As you're registering for this session, some of you had filled out in the text box about something you're curious about or a question you had when it comes to connection. And there's a number of people that talked about this idea of authenticity. How can we actually show up as our real selves and share the emotions and challenges that we're actually going through? So I want to be able to delve deeper into how we can do this. This is another story that was shared through this What's Your Story gallery, and I think it encapsulates this idea of how do you actually foster connection. So this person writes, do you ever take the time to ask someone how their day is going? Sometimes that is the one question that starts a friendship or even a relationship. So ask that person how their day is going. Show them that you're there for them. Maybe they'll surprise you with their answer. Maybe they'll open up their heart to you, letting them see who they are at their true center. It seems simple, but the question of how are you, and what I'm going to suggest more creative ways of asking how are you, can open that door to building a relationship. Because if you think about it, all the connections you have in your life, excluding your family, all those relationships once started as strangers. You had some initial interaction to actually spark that relationship, and then it was cultivated and grown from there. So what we're about to do now, because I designed my presentations in a way that's interactive, Michelle will be creating a breakout room, and I will explain what you will be doing there. So I have some alternatives to the question of how are you? And the reason I have that is how are you is not a good question because oftentimes people don't answer truthfully or they give a very surface level response. But if you ask better questions, you're going to have better conversations. And if you have better conversations, you're going to have better connections. So it's quite a simple shift that you can already make in your day-to-day interactions. So I'm going to give you a few suggestions on how you could ask a different alternative to how are you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? What colors or images describe how you're feeling today? How are you really? And if today was a TV episode, what would the title be? So feel free to pick one of these or several of these, and you're going to be put in a breakout room with 2 to 3 other people for about 2 minutes, and we'll come back and do a debrief on how that experience was for you. Okay, as people are coming back in, I'd love you to type into the chat how that experience was for you. If it was a bit awkward, that is totally okay. If you found something surprising, feel free to share that too, or something you liked about it. So write in the chat how that experience was for you. Okay, Joe says not enough time, didn't have enough time. Yes, it could have been, okay, multiple people said not enough time. Insightful, says Marissa, nice but brief. Lubna had some audio issues, but we did try typing it out. Lubna loves the question. It's tricky because there's nothing special about today. Not a good day nor a bad day. That sometimes you have days like that too. Okay, sounds good. Thank you for folks sharing about how that went for you. And yeah, this just gives you some practice. If you didn't find this enough time, this is something literally you can apply later today if you are going to start a conversation with someone of asking an alternative to how are you? Because again, if you ask better questions, you're going to have better conversations. And even if people might find it a bit strange, like literally I'll say to people, like, instead of asking how are you, can I ask you a bit of more creative question? And people are usually open to it because they might want a more meaningful conversation too, rather than something just surface level. Okay. I want to talk about this concept of social fitness. So first of all, let me give the analogy to physical fitness. If you think about physical fitness activities, there's lots of different activities you could do, whether it's going to do yoga, going biking, playing tennis, doing weightlifting, going for a run. And so you will have preferences when it comes to the type of physical activities you like to do. I know in my case, I like the lower intensity activities of yoga or going for a walk or a run. I don't think I'm ever going to do a triathlon, for example. Then there's a parallel for physical fitness into social fitness. Because if you think about different social activities you could do, there's quite a lot of them, and there might be ones that you prefer. I know when it comes to campus culture, there can be a big emphasis on drinking culture and going to parties or going to the club. But that might not be for you, and you don't have to feel pressured that that's where you need to go in order to find connection. Because I know in my case, I'm an introvert, and I prefer talking to people in one-on-one situations or in a small group. I'd rather not be in a loud, crowded, and sweaty environment. And so knowing that, I can find the type of social fitness activities that fit me the best. So whether that's joining a club that's aligned with my interests or meeting a friend and asking them to meet for coffee. So just as you have preferences for physical fitness activities, you can have preferences when it comes to the social activity that will align best with you and who you are. A related concept to this is called social health. And the definition of social health is it's the dimension of well-being that comes from connection and community. And this is defined by one of my colleagues in connection field. Her name is Kasley Killen. We talk nowadays a lot about physical health and mental health. So physical health is about our bodies, mental health is about our minds, but social health is about our relationships. And what I see is a similar evolution to mental health. I know at one point mental health was this very taboo subject that people never talked about openly, but literally this is part of an event series all about mental health that You Flourish is being hosted for right now. But what if social health had that same evolution as well? What if that was also part of our everyday conversations? Because it's just as important as I mentioned before, how different would my life have been if earlier on I had a class on here's how to make friends and here's how to take care of your social health. My life would have been very different, but also it's not too late to start thinking and applying these concepts. So I'd also love to know from folks in the chat, feel free to type in, is this your first time hearing about the term social health or not? So you can just type yes or no. Okay, I'm glad I'm spreading the good word about social health. Okay, so how do we take care of our social fitness and social health? So this looks like a lot of text. Let me break this down first. This is from a book, again, from one of my colleagues called We Should Get Together by Kat Velos. And the whole book is about how you cultivate adult friendships, because it can be pretty hard. Everyone has very busy schedules and commitments, and it can be hard to actually maintain and deepen those relationships. And so one thing that Kat Velos emphasizes in her book is you can be intentional with clearly communicating what you want from a friendship. And so this is the example from her book. And you'll see that there's these 4 elements that I've highlighted here in color of proximity, frequency, compatibility, and commitment. So I'll explain each of these as I go through this. So when Kat goes to an event, this is how she introduces herself. She says, "Hi, I'm Kat. I'm looking to make a couple of close friends who live less than 20 minutes away and who are also staying in town for a few more years." So this is about physical proximity. It's important to hang out in person once a week, once every week or 2. So she's defining the level of frequency or the cadence that she'd like to spend time with this friendship. My ideal friend would be someone who's trustworthy, who is into personal growth, and a good communicator who's more earnest than they are sarcastic. So this is talking about compatibility. What are the actual values or interests that can be the foundation for this friendship and what you're looking for? And then lastly, as a friend, I've been told that I'm a good listener, funny, and reliable. I treasure my friends and try my best to let them know on a regular basis how much I appreciate them. And so this is commitment. Commitment is about how you show up in that actual relationship in terms of demonstrating care and reciprocity and being there for people. And so I will give people an opportunity to apply this now. And the reason why this is helpful is because people can't read our minds. Unless we tell them what we're looking for in a friendship, it might fizzle out. And if you do clearly communicate what you're looking for and the other person shares what they're looking for too, that can help to streamline the process of friendship building. So with these 4 different components, I'll ask you to think about this now. So proximity, again, are you wanting to connect in person or online? How important is physical proximity to you? I will say you can still have meaningful connections with people even if you're not in the same city. But if that is an important component that you can see each other face to face, then that's part of who you are. Frequency in terms of how frequently would you want to interact and what would those interactions look like? It might look like meeting up, hanging out, and doing an activity, but it also might look like sending a daily message to each other. Compatibility, so what are the values, shared interests, or characteristics you're looking for from that relationship? And then lastly, commitment. How will you actually show up for each other in terms of emotional support, honesty, reciprocity, etc.? So I'll give folks, let's say 2 minutes And again, you can type into the chat answering any of these types of questions. But if to say, what is that type of friendship that you're looking for? What is that type of connection you're looking for in terms of proximity, frequency, compatibility, and commitment? Because the clearer you are on this, the clearer you can communicate to other people, and you can find the right types of connections. So I'll set a timer for 2 minutes, and feel free to type into the chat your responses or reflections on any of these types of questions. And I will read them out as they come in. Okay, Nicholas says in person. Longing for in-person connection, says Joe. Because one thing you can do afterwards is write out your own introduction, like Kat said, in terms of what she was looking for in a specific friendship. Oh, we have a detailed response. Okay, Kevin says, I want friends I can connect online or in person once a week, maybe twice. Someone who's lighthearted, but serious and friendly overall, and interested in other cultures, and we can have scheduled times and connect and plan on WhatsApp. Great, Kevin. I love how detailed you are. And yes. Okay, for me, how we connect is less important to me than frequency. Regular connection, maybe once a week or every other week. Jeff says, I'm surprised by how foreign this thought process feels. I'm glad you brought this up because, again, if we were never taught about social health and social fitness, these might be new to you. Because how do we learn anything? We learn it through practice. If we were never taught these things, how would we know? And I think there can be intentionality with how we shape and design our connection so it fits better for us rather than leaving it up to chance or leaving it up to fate that somehow these connections are going to happen. We can have the agency to guide it. And also, if you see someone in the chat that you align with, you could message them. You could literally make friends with them too, as in this meeting. Okay, great. So I'm glad people had a chance to reflect on this. This is about 2 minutes. And so you can continue reflecting about this too, because these are things you could communicate with your existing friends or with your new friends as well. Okay. So I'm aware that there's some staff or faculty in the room, or also students that might be in a facilitator or managerial type role. So I do want to offer some ideas for what you could do to facilitate connection. So this is at the University of Lethbridge. Earlier this year, I had the wonderful opportunity to do a consulting contract there where we launched this play program. We called it the Rec Room, different than the Rec Room in Calgary for folks that know that. But this idea of, can we create a recreational space where people can come together to relax, make new connections, and just have fun. And so this is a picture of one of the spaces there where you see there's these beanbag chairs, we have a giant chess set, we have puzzles, and we have ping pong tables. And the whole idea that this points towards is social infrastructure. So you might know about like civic or physical infrastructure, which is about how our cities are designed. So roads, buildings, etc. But you can also think about how can you design the physical environment to help facilitate more connections. So that's social infrastructure. So you can think about ways of how can you change your actual environment, your physical office or the campus space to help facilitate connection. I know probably on campus already there are some play spaces there. And so this just gets you thinking of how can you design the environment to make it easier for folks. Because the other concept I will bring up is called third spaces. So first space is home, second spaces are work, and then third space is where do people still casually get together to interact? So from a city perspective, that could be places like parks and coffee shops and libraries. In a university context, you can think about, again, first space is work, or first space is home, second space is work, whether that's your actual job or your academic work as a student. But then where are those spots on campus that you can still casually gather to make new friends? for facilitators, again, these are some of the things I carried around in my toolkit. So I own a number of what are called conversation-based card games. So it's a deck of cards, but each card on it has questions in order to facilitate conversation. So similar to what I was sharing before, these alternatives to how are you, these can be a really helpful tool to facilitate connection as well, because it's framed in the context of play. Because if you run out of stuff to talk about, you can go on to the next question, and there's more creative questions than you might actually think of asking yourself. So one example here is called Spark by Seek Discomfort. It's a deck of 200 cards with various questions on them. And you can use it in the context of an icebreaker or a team building activity, or even as self-reflection prompts for journaling. Here are some other brands. I will say I'm not sponsored by any of these, but I do own all of these as well. There's one called Big Talk, as opposed to Small Talk. So similar idea of having questions to facilitate deeper conversations. There's one from Holsti, which has questions that are themed. So questions around passion, or questions around happiness, or questions around purpose. And then a really great game called We're Not Really Strangers, which I've played many times with friends and also strangers, that have also always led to a more deeper connection as well. So whether you want to buy this and play with your own friends, or again, if you're in a facilitator type role, these might help to facilitate more meaningful connections. As mentioned earlier, I was running this Humans of ULETH project at the University of Lethbridge, and in addition to doing these interviews, I also had the fortunate opportunity to host events. And so we had done this event of blindfolded conversations, which was actually inspired by Humans of U Calgary as well. But the whole idea is, like, instead of judging people based on their physical appearances, is there some way to do something more out of the box and creative? And so what our team had done is we got 3D glasses from the movie theaters and we spray painted it black. And so when people are wearing it, you can't see the other person. Bandanas can also be used as blindfolds as well. So you could run this as a team building activity or as a club event. We also facilitated this activity of physical connection. And so what I had asked people to do is for people to sit back to back and to see if you can feel the other person breathing. And then you're asked to actually sync up your in-breaths and your out-breaths with each other. I first was exposed to this exercise through a counselor at the University of Calgary when they were doing training for the residence assistants. And I found it so powerful, where it's not just like a mental or emotional connection, you can have this physical connection with people, as long as they feel comfortable. I've also done this activity. Oh, I see in the chat someone said bananas can also be used as blindfolds. Yes, you could do that too. So I've also done this activity called Web of Connections. So you can have a ball of yarn or string, and people are standing in a circle, and you give them some prompt for them to respond to. So in my case, for example, I've asked folks, what's something you're struggling with right now? And so whoever's holding that ball of yarn will share, whether it's like, you know, I feel like I'm so overwhelmed with all my different assignments, I'm feeling burnt out in my work, whatever it is. And then after that person has shared, someone else in the group can say, me too, or same, if they resonate or relate to what that person had just shared. Afterwards, you can toss that ball of yarn to someone else, and then they share, and it keeps going round and around until everyone's holding a piece of the yarn, and it's a physical representation that, hey, we're actually all connected. And as I was saying before, we're all going through life. And part of the human condition is there's going to be good days and bad days and okay days. And can there actually be a safe space to share authentically? And for us to realize that on the surface, it might look like we're all different, but underneath, we all share similar traits and experiences because we're human. And so afterwards too, what I do is I cut the yarn, and people can keep their piece of the yarn as a physical reminder. It's like, you're always still connected, whether you can see it or not. So here's some ideas. I have many more ideas than this, but I just wanted to showcase a few that I've actually done in the university context. Okay, and then in terms of other designing for connection, if you're not in a facilitator role, this is the section for you. This is more about reimagining how you do your daily personal interactions with people. So going back to this lollipop moment idea I introduced at the very beginning, I have taken that concept of like, okay, how else can I create these interactions that make people feel special? I'm a big fan of sticky notes because on sticky notes, you can just draw or write anything you want on it. The sky's the limit with your creativity. And so I've done this before where after I met with someone or there's something I appreciate about that person, I will write thank you and then take a selfie and then I'll send it to that person because that's something more creative and personalized than just typing out thank you. One thing I've also done is during the holiday season, I recorded a video message to wish people happy holidays, or I guess in this case, happy Halloween, since we just passed Halloween. And what I do is I upload that video to YouTube as an unlisted video, and then I can attach that as an email or whatever messaging platform that I'm utilizing. So again, people don't tend to receive something like this, and so when they receive it, it can make their day. And even though it doesn't take that much effort for me to create it. Another one, when it's someone's birthday, so it was my friend Cindy's birthday, and I thought, okay, instead of just going to her Facebook page and typing, happy birthday, hope you have a lovely day, what if I sent her a voice note and I sang happy birthday to her? So that's literally what I did. That's a screenshot from my message. And I told her like, okay, the pitch might not be great, but it's the sentiment that counts. And it did make her day because she said, you're the only one that sent me a voice recording of singing happy birthday. So that really stood out for her. And then another idea, whenever I go to in-person events or conferences, I will literally carry around a pad of thank you cards so that if I see a speaker or another attendee that really stands out to me, then I can write them a note about what I appreciated about them, what I noticed about them, and I'll make sure I give it to them before the end of the event. So again, no one really thinks to do this, but if you do it, it can really make that person's day and they might keep it for a long time. Because I know the notes that I've given to folks, it's still sitting on their shelf as a reminder of this type of connection and relationship we have. So as I'm sharing this too, feel free to type into the chat if this sparks ideas or you see yourself implementing any of these. I know I sort of take it to the extreme with all the different excuses to connect that I try to create, but there might be one or two ideas that really stand out to you. One thing I've also done in the university context is I bought these stickers. So you know the stickers that elementary school teachers hand out to their students of like, good job, A+, gold star. I bought a pack of 1,200 of these and I went around and handed it out to people, especially during midterm season, just to show like, adults probably love this too. And I remember approaching a group of students and saying like, I know this is a bit weird, but do you want some stickers? And it was a group of education students. They're like, yes, we love stickers. We give out stickers to all of our kids as well. And I remember one student taking a sticker. He took the A+ sticker and he's like, I'm taking the A+ sticker so I can manifest this A+ for my upcoming exams and assignments. So I found that really funny. So again, it doesn't need to be expensive or complicated. If you have some intentionality and creativity towards it, that can still make a really big ripple effect. In the middle here, I have a picture of me pointing to this neuroscience sign. And the reason I did this is I had an opportunity to present to the Hotchkiss Brain Institute at the University of Calgary. And when I was doing work at the University of Lethbridge, they had this neuroscience banner. So that just prompted me to think like, oh, this reminds me of this person or this group that I work with. So I'm going to snap a quick photo and send it to them and literally say like, hey, I saw this today and I thought of you. Thank you again for this opportunity. So much of this too can just be paying attention to your environment. And if it prompts you or reminds you of someone, why don't you take a photo of it and send it to them? It's like, hey, I was thinking of you. And then lastly, I've also designed some graphics as well of like, send this to someone you care about, or you could find these online as well. So you can manufacture or design the connection to happen of reaching out to existing people or being more intentional of how you connect with new people as well. I see lots of good suggestions in the chat too, so great. And then literally this is lollipop moments. What I've done is I have bought a box of lollipops and I've tied positive affirmations to them of you're worthy, you're enough, you're part of this community. I hope this brightens up your day. And I've handed that out too. So again, it doesn't need to be complicated. You can do these small, you can create these excuses to connect for yourself in your day-to-day interactions. And again, there might be one idea or two ideas here that really stick out to you in terms of what you might apply or that you've experienced before already. Okay, I do want to touch on this point as well. Some people I know in their questions had asked about how do you deepen relationships or how do you maintain your relationships once there's that initial interaction. So here's some tips around that. You can set reminders to check in with your relationships. You can set it into your calendar, or if you have some other type of to-do list app of like, hey, if you know the ideal frequency you'd like to interact with this person, whether that's once a month or once every 3 months or once every week, you can set reminders for yourself because in reality, life does get busy. We can lose track of things and feel overwhelmed. But if there's these reminders like, hey, I really do value this relationship, I want to maintain it, you can use technology and systems to support you with that. You don't have to keep it all within your brain. You can also ask your relationships. Again, I'm a big advocate for clear communication because you can't read each other's minds. You can ask your existing relationships, like, how do you feel about a relationship? How do you feel about the amount of time we're spending together? Is it not enough? Is it just right? Or is it too much? And what kind of things would you like to do together? Is it the same things that we've already been doing or new things that you want to try? You can foster this relationship. Every relationship's a two-way street. So you can be the one that initiates and asks these types of questions to see if you're on the same page with these things. Again, relationships does take some intentional curating and cultivating to happen. Okay. And then I wanted to highlight some campus opportunities for connection as well. I will say this is not an exhaustive list. There are more than this, but I did want to highlight a few different student services and other student groups that you could get involved with. First of all, the Students' Union I know has a club list, or they call it their club hub, which lists all the different student groups on campus. So again, going back to before, if you know the type of friendships you're looking for in terms of common interests or compatibility, you might find a club that's well suited for you. There's Unwind events. There's the Center for Career and Personal Development, the Faith and Spirituality Center, the Writing Symbols Lodge, the Q Center, the Women's Resource Center. There's also the Graduate Students Association. And then there's various volunteering opportunities under the umbrella of the Peer Helpers program too. And I know there's some representatives or staffs from multiple of these departments. So feel free if you want to share more information about your department as well and how people could get connected through there. And the last point I'll make here is like, if it doesn't exist, you could create your own too. You can create your own events and gatherings and change how you approach day-to-day interactions if it doesn't already exist. Because again, culture is the accumulation of interactions and you are part of the culture. You can shift it too. So again, if there's staff in the room that are from these different departments, feel free to leave some more information or contact information too. Okay, so I do want to bring this all together now. I've been talking about a lot of different concepts and a lot of different ideas, but what will you actually do? What will you actually commit to? So whether you have a physical piece of paper or a digital notepad, I want you to write down a list of 3 things that you're going to do to take action to build connection. So I have listed a few examples here as well. And as you're reflecting about this, I'll bring up again the concept of social fitness, of thinking about the actual activities that appeal to you and are aligned with you, so that it makes it easier for you to actually take action. So feel free, as you think about your 3 things that you're going to do to take action to build connection, type it into the chat as well, because that might also spark other people's creativity or ideas and help with collective accountability. So we'll give folks some time for this, and I'll catch up in reading what's been said in the chat as well. Okay. Joe says one of my friends did the singing happy birthday before, so now I'll do it as well. Lumno says, I love stickers. Kevin does Christmas cards. I've been a recipient of a Christmas card from Kevin. Kimberly says, one of my TAs handed out stickers regularly and led to such a nice connection. I ended up volunteering with her lab and building a relationship, and it all started with stickers. Okay, there you go. Lubna says, I like to send random kindness meals to folks on my social media lists. Okay. I'll give, let's say, 20 more seconds for people to share what actions they're going to take to build connection. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing in the chat, that's okay too. Okay. Bringing food to colleagues, join and find local walking club, join a social dancing club. Our team has a social club, book club, step challenges, organizes potlucks, and I'm working on the next book club invite. Awesome. Great. Okay, so with those actions that you've created, I do want to help you work through any barriers that might come up as well, because one big emotion that might come out when it comes to connecting is fear. So how do we actually address and manage fear? Because if something is, our brains are designed in a way to protect us. So if we perceive something as being too risky or not worth it, we're just going to avoid it and not take action. So I want to provide a framework or a tool for how you can manage fear if that's something that comes up when it comes to connection. So there's this tool I learned called the fear ladder. So imagine a ladder with 10 different rungs, and each rung corresponds to a different level of fear from a scale of 1 to 10. So as you're going up, it increases in fear, and the lower it is on the ladder, it decreases in fear. So there was a few sample actions that I had listed before that I'm going to overlay on top of this in terms of how much fear might taking that action cause. So for me, let's say asking a stranger out, like me approaching a random person, asking them out on a blind date would be a 10 out of 10 for me on my fear ladder. So it's not very actionable because it's too beyond my existing comfort zone and too big of a leap for me to do it. But instead, if I ask myself, what's my 1 out of 10 on my ladder? What's something that's slightly outside of my comfort zone, but still feels doable? And I can keep practicing that and developing my confidence. And then I can go to my 2 out of 10 and my 3 out of 10 and so on. So for example, a 1 out of 10 might be asking the barista at Starbucks, how's your day? Because service workers are sort of obligated anyway to be friendly to you. and they'll probably be asking you, how's your day? So it's really low stakes for me to ask them back, how's your day going? Or again, one of the more creative, how are you questions. A 2 out of 10 might be messaging a friend and making plans because I already have existing trust and rapport with that person, and I know they're not likely to reject me. But again, it's still exercising my social skills because social skills literally has the word skills in it. So it's something that needs to be practiced. You're going to make mistakes, but you can keep going. It's also like going to the gym and exercising your muscles. You're exercising your social muscle. So with those actions that you come up with, you can assign them on a scale of 1 to 10 on where it falls on your fear ladder. And if it feels more actionable, you can start with whichever one's the lowest ranked one. Because if you start with your 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, it's slightly outside your comfort zone, but still feels very doable. And you can work up your confidence to tackle perhaps more challenging social interactions. Okay, and this is another helpful mindset tool. It's changing your what ifs to even ifs. So what ifs are all these hypothetical scenarios like, what if I go to the event and I don't know anyone? And what if I go there and I have an awkward interaction? And what if people don't like me? And the cumulative result of all these what ifs is then, okay, I'm just going to stay at home. I'm not going to put myself out there because it feels like it's too big of a risk. But you can change your what ifs to even ifs. So even if I did have an awkward interaction at this event, then what? You're already imagining the worst case scenario and realizing that you still have power and capability to respond to it. that it's not the end of the world, that there's still other people at that event, or you can still celebrate your effort for even showing up in the first place. So you can change your what ifs, which can be very paralyzing, and changing them to even ifs, which can be empowering for you. And then this last concept that I want to explain and then demonstrate for you, I come up with a connection equation, which is comprised of thinking plus thanking equals connecting. So this has been, I've alluded to this throughout anyway, where this idea of, can you be thoughtful of the people in your life? Because if you reach out to someone and say, hey, I was thinking of you, or I thought of you, that's going to make them feel seen and heard and appreciated. So whether that's, hey, I saw this book and it reminded me of you, or saw this resource or this opportunity, which I think you'd be perfect for, I wanted to forward this along to you. That thinking component can be an important ingredient for connecting. And then the other one is thanking. Can you do something or say something that will express your gratitude and appreciation for that other person? And when you do this in combination, thinking plus thanking equals connecting, that's how you create these more meaningful connections. Another analogy I can use is if you imagine a connection like a seed, like the first time you meet each other is like planting a seed, it's going to take some time to cultivate that plant until it actually sprouts. If you apply this connection equation, it's like putting fertilizer. It helps to accelerate the process of developing that type of connection. So to practice what I preach, I have someone in mind that I would like to, that I'm thinking of, and that I want to express my thanks to. And I'm gonna call them. I'm gonna call them to say some kind words of what I appreciate about them. So fingers crossed they pick up, because I have done this before where my friend did not pick up and she messaged me right. Oh, Sam. I'm gonna leave a voice message for Sam. Oh, Sam, you did not pick up. Okay, I will.
Get your message, either because you were not speaking or because of a bad connection. To disconnect,
Okay, all good. Let me call someone else in my life just to see if they're available. And I will still call Sam later. She just doesn't have voicemail enabled. I'll say, yeah, again, so I've called someone before. Hello, Kabir. Hi.
How are you doing, man?
Do you have a minute?
Yes, of course I have a minute.
Okay, and are you good that you're on like speakerphone in like a presentation right now of like 50 people?
Sure.
So hello everyone, this is Kabir, he's on the call. And Kabir, I wanted to, I was thinking of you today and I just wanted to reach out to say again, how much I am inspired by your leadership of organizing meetups and bringing people together, and going outside of your comfort zone. And I loved having you at my Connection Club session earlier this week, where I think you really inspired other people to be leaders too. And also hosting me at your place when I was in Toronto last week, and taking me out for Indian food and all other sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much more I could say, but I just, yeah, really want to make sure that you know that you matter to me and I appreciate you.
It's my absolute pleasure, man. And thank you so much, of course, for acknowledging all that. Yes.
Yeah. So I I hope I'm not like interrupting you in the middle of your work day.
I am at my work with then, of course. Like, that makes my day so much better. But thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Well, I'll chat with you later. I still need to wrap up my presentation. So
Of course, best of luck. Yeah.
okay. And there's lots of people in the chat wishing you well too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, all those people. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Okay. So I'll call Sam later as well. She doesn't have voicemail enabled, but I just called my friend Kabir, and yeah, there you go. It goes to show again, it doesn't need to be complicated or take so much time. This was just like a 1.5 minute phone call, but it makes me feel better. It makes him feel better. So it just, again, goes to show you can create these lollipop moments in your day-to-day lives. I'm gonna withhold from questions because I'm aware we're at 12. I will have a slide with my contact information where, again, if this has sparked something in you that you want to chat further, or you still have existing questions that are on your mind, I'd love to be able to chat further. Because the way I see it, it's like we're all now connected, and I want to maintain that connection as well, especially if you have something more specific that you're going through either as a student or with the teams that you're working with as a staff. Want to be able to give more guided, personalized support in that area. And to end off, I want to close with this sentiment that you never know how any connection can transform your life. It's my motto. And as I shared at the very beginning, it encapsulates this idea of lollipop moments, where handing out lollipops on that first day of classes led to a marriage and led to this person staying in university and graduating. Or the other friend that I shared, this international student who got his first hug since moving away from home, and then they ended up dating too. And then, as I just demonstrated, my friend Kabir, who I met about 1.5 years ago, and he's been a really important connection in my life too. So you never know where meeting the right person in the right place can change your whole trajectory. And this capability is within you every single day and every single interaction. So whether it's deepening or reaching back out to your existing relationships, or recognizing that every single person you pass in the hallway, you could surprise them with something, whether it's with a lollipop or a sticker or just asking a better question than how are you? And you never know what might come out of this. You never know how any connection can transform your life. So I'll leave my contact information here again. Feel free to take a screenshot. It's my email, richard@excusestoconnect.com. I also have my website, and you can connect with me on social media as well. Again, if you have nice things to say about me, I would not be opposed to that. You could send me a message, but also if you have questions or further things you'd like to chat about, I'm very open to that as well. So here's my contact information.
Thank you
And
so much.
I will pass it back to you, Michelle, if you have any closing thoughts. Thank you. You're a relationship that has transformed my life too, along with Amy. So I really appreciate that you have allowed me this opportunity.
Well, it's so great to have had you here today. I learned some things. I'm so excited to hear your messages because, you know, they really contribute to this culture of connection. We all make up the culture at U Calgary, and that's actually one thing I wanted to mention to you, that there's some resources that for support for folks across the university, and I want you to be aware of what we have here.